Welcome to session number 3 of the Free Yourself of Unseen Blocks mini-course. I'm Daniel Piatek. As an author, spiritual mentor, and intuitive, I have the joy and privilege of guiding others to make profound and lasting change in their lives. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to take what I presented in sessions 1 and 2, go deeper, and open the door to the promised land of having the life, the situations, the experience of being you that you so deeply long to have. In this series, I'm trying to bring to light what's unseen that's running each and every one of us. Not because it's hopeless, not because we just have to resign ourselves to it. No, not at all. In fact, it's because I know how to get beyond it and how you can have your best life. You can go deeper for yourself into this new territory if you take a few minutes and experiment with the tools and techniques that I share at the end of each session. These will give you direct access into the non-conscious dimensions I'm trying to open up. As in the previous sessions, I will teach another technique at the end of this one. It's a simple yet radically powerful way to access this storehouse of intelligence that lives in our non-conscious. It's a way to access the wisdom contained within you. Check it out at the end of today's session. Okay, so do you remember how in session 1, just how much lives in the non-conscious? So what I shared there was that 98% of what we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, 98% of what we take in through our senses in any given moment, we can't process it consciously, but it's stored in our non-conscious. The other astounding fact was that 90 to 95% of our intelligence, our ability to gather and process information, lives in the non-conscious. And this isn't all of what's there. So I want to share a couple of quotes. So psychiatrist and sage Carl Jung, he was one of Freud's main students, said, until you make the non-conscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Stan Grof, a psychiatrist and founder of transpersonal psychology, gives a different spin on the same territory. He says, consciousness, which is our ability to perceive, does not just passively reflect the objective world. It plays an active role in creating reality itself. So Grof's statement reflects the understanding of quantum physics, which I discussed in our last session. This new understanding, which has actually been around for 115 years, suggests that we are in some ways, maybe even in significant ways, creating our own experience of life without knowing we're doing it or how that mechanism works. So the unseen, the non-conscious parts of us affect us in ways that we have so little idea of. But don't despair. If we can begin to appreciate that this is true and open up to it, then there's the very real ability to not be controlled by it. You see, what we've been taught is that if we do the hard work of going to therapy or really digging in to see what's going on, then we can become aware of what's triggering us, what we do when we're triggered, and learn ways to cope with or to respond to it differently. So all of this is incredibly helpful to not simply be at the mercy of these unconscious patterns. If you've done any kind of self-awareness work or therapy, you'll know that for yourself. But in this day and age, we can do much better. There's a whole hell of a lot better that we can do, in fact. So what about the stuff that we don't even know about or can't figure out? And no matter what, no matter how hard we try, we can't get at it through our conscious mind. Yet it's affecting us all the time. Not to worry. With up-to-date understanding of how this all works and the tools and techniques that can access the magnificent capacities that already exist within us, we can literally get down to the root of these problems and pull them out down at the root. We use, in essence, the body's computer to find them. We access the huge storehouse of information and intelligence that lives in the non-conscious. We can't access it through the conscious mind. It's not possible to access it through the conscious mind. But we can access it using our body and the creative part of our minds, our imagination. In this way, we get the direction that we need, and then using the tools and techniques that I know and I can teach you, we release the trapped energies that exist in us in the form of emotions or beliefs. We release the unseen blocks. So now I've been using mind-body energy approaches to healing, to making profound change for years for myself and with my clients. I see directly with my own eyes and in my own life how powerful and utterly transformative they are. I see it for my own eyes. But because my college and graduate training is in biology, chemistry, and physics, the hard sciences, and because I was raised in the time and the culture I was, my mind was trained to think in certain ways. And so, even as I'm doing this work on myself and my clients, I see the results. There are many times when I just shake my head and laugh and think, this is weird stuff, how could this possibly work? I only have that response because of how I was taught, of the culture I was raised in. I received a lot of years of inculcation and education in how things work. And this kind of work, this kind of healing doesn't fit in with those outdated parameters. But science, technology, and human understanding has changed so much over the course of our lives. So there are already scores and scores of therapies, many of which have become generally accepted, that rely on an energetic understanding of human life and the human body. Radiation therapies, ultrasonic therapies, magnetic therapies, acupuncture, homeopathy, polarity therapy, EFT or tapping, healing touch, therapeutic touch, Reiki, acupuncture, craniosacral therapy, etc. The pace of change over the course of our lives and the advancement of technologies on all fronts has been astounding. So I thank you and appreciate you for coming to learn about what's new and how it might help you in your life. So now I want to take all this information I've been sharing and make it more practical. See what this looks like in real life. So do you know somebody that no matter what, just can't seem to make something work in his life the way that he wants it to? Maybe there's something about work or something about relationships that no matter how hard he tries, just can't make it work. Maybe you experience this for yourself. There's something that no matter how hard you try, you can't get there. You can't get free of something. You can't get what you want. And when you look at it, it just doesn't make sense. It seems like there must be some way to do it, or you should be able to get there, and you plan it and you work toward it, but you just can't get there. Things just don't line up to really come through for you. So I want to share a little bit about my story to help illustrate this. So people who've known me well over my life don't understand a fear that I've had, a fear of being more open, more public, more at ease in public situations, of just sharing freely about who I am, what I do, what's important to me in terms of work, what I do and how I can help people, and in other arenas, just to be more relaxed, just being open and being myself. It was a challenge for me to just be open and relaxed. And it didn't make any sense. It's held me back in so many ways throughout my life. And people that knew me just couldn't imagine why, because I didn't either, to be honest. I wasn't exactly shy, and I'm not generally insecure, until I needed to get into a situation that was more public, and I needed to just be at ease and vulnerable in these situations. And it seemed to get worse as I got older. So let me pull back the curtain a little and use my story of what's happened as I've worked on this to demonstrate how these unseen blocks and dynamics work for us in real time. So, flashback to 1970. I'm 7 years old, playing on the living room floor of our small house with my brother, who's 2 years younger. So 2 little boys, 5 and 7, being silly, making noise, just having fun. So suddenly and without any warning, my dad is completely red-faced, furiously screaming at me, and I scramble under the dining table. He's yelling at me, trying to grab me, and I am terrified, literally terrified, that if he reaches me, he's going to kill me. And I mean literally kill me. That's how it felt. So I'm crouching in the back where he can't reach me, and I have no idea what I did to cause such a response. None. So through the craziness of what's happening, I can get that he's furious about me saying something about the funny noises my brother was making. Apparently I said something like, "You sound just like Uncle John." I had no idea what I said, but I think that's what he was yelling at me. So you see, my Uncle John was my dad's older brother, who was sitting in that same room about 8 feet from where all this was happening. I hadn't met my Uncle John until just months earlier, when he was rolled into our home in a wheelchair after being shipped back from Vietnam, severely mortally wounded. To my 7-year-old eyes, he was kind of a lifeless monster occupying the middle of our lives, who could only mumble utterances. So this tragic scene returned to my conscious memory, returned to my remembering it 40 years after that happened. It was during an exercise I was doing in a training. Until that moment in that exercise, I had completely forgotten about this whole situation. So after the event, I called my sister and said, "Hey, do you remember this?" And she said, "Oh boy, do I remember that. I ran to the bedroom. I was scared to death." So I hadn't made it up. The purpose of the exercise in this training was to discover a childhood memory in which I made a decision about how I could or could not be in my life, which was limiting my life today. And this is the memory that emerged from the recesses of my non-conscious. So in the process, we were asked to go and look, what was the decision? So in that split second, completely unconscious moment, at 7 years old, I made a decision when I thought my father was literally going to kill me. That's how I felt at 7. The decision I made was, you'd better be careful what comes out of your mouth. You may say something and not have any idea that it might get you killed. So it was a fundamental belief that was operating down in the deep recesses of my inner computer, in my non-conscious. Can you appreciate that this might have had something to do with me feeling a great deal of anxiety, insecurity, and self-doubt about just being open and relaxed speaking in public, just naturally allowing the flow of words to come out? It was pretty obvious to me. So there's a few points that I'd like to make by sharing this story. First, we all have stories like this, some much more dramatic, some not nearly as dramatic. And whether we're aware of them or not, mostly we're not aware of them, they're stored. Things that happened in our childhood which were profoundly impactful, but either we don't remember them or barely remember them, and may have no idea whatsoever that they're impacting our lives to this day. That impact, whether we remember it or not, back then was indeed impact. It didn't go away, it's still there. That 7-year-old literally felt like he was going to die by something that came out of his mouth that he didn't know. Today we call this trauma. And then even if we do remember these things from the past, it's nearly impossible to appreciate the extent of the impact that it had on us back then when we're looking at it from the adult point of view. So what happens to a kid when something like this, or many other types of things, more or less traumatic, happens? That's what happens. On some level, it's and in that split second, life-altering unconscious decisions get made that literally alter and limit what's possible for us throughout our lives, until we discover them and then do something to clear them. But something else also happens when we go in situations like that. Not only the beliefs, the energy that gets stored in a belief, but energy can get trapped in the form of emotion. So the confusion, the fear, the terror, the insecurity, the anger, the shame, the worthlessness, those intense emotions that happen in moments like that can't run their course. They can't do what they want to do, which is to move to completion. It's like when too much electricity suddenly runs through the wiring of the house. And since it's more than the system can handle without damaging it, the fuse blows or the breaker flips. A similar mechanism happens in our bodies, and that energy in the form of emotion gets trapped. It's stopped from flowing so that it won't overwhelm us and blow our circuits, so to speak. It's an instinctual survival mechanism. So the energy in the form of emotion gets trapped, it gets stuck, it goes, and it gets hidden away, shall we say, for a later time when we can come back and let it run its course and move on. Because if it doesn't run its course and move on, it'll ruin our lives, and we'll call it fate. So when my memory first returned of this instance at being 7, I could see the profound decision I'd instantly made and how it affected my life now. It allowed me to have a conversation with my dad about it, which was healing and helped to bring us a little closer. And I had an understanding to fight back with when I would feel horribly insecure, but anxiety and self-doubt still significantly got in my way in being able to freely express myself. So it wasn't until years after that, memory returning, and I was doing body-based energetic work, and I began to get to the places where the were stored. I cleared them, and then things significantly shifted for me. This is when I feel like I was truly healed of that old trauma and of the debilitating effects that it had been having on my life up until that day. And now I'm here sharing these new unorthodox healing techniques with you and hundreds of people, feeling secure and confident and loving sharing this information. It's a huge, huge change from not that many years ago. You see, it was the body-mind energetic work to go to the root of the hidden blocks. Pull them up, clear the stuck traumatic energy in those that made being free of them possible. And the best part, doing it is not a traumatic process. And it's such an exciting journey to feel yourself becoming freer and freer as you begin to express more and more of who you truly are without the So I really wanted to go into the example of my life to show you how this works, because most of us don't know that such huge shifts can actually be possible. Maybe we can see something about what we're up to and be able to try to control and manage and get beyond the intensity of being triggered. And that's good, it's better than nothing. But being able to get down there and remove the triggers, being able to remove that's a whole nother way of living. I truly hope you have a much better idea of just how much the non-conscious dimensions are at play in your life with some of the difficulties that you are facing. In the earlier times of our lives, decisions get made, or we absorb beliefs and attitudes and opinions about ourselves and about life from the environment that we grow up in, the culture we grow up in, the time we grow up in. It's not that we've done anything wrong, it's just a normal part of growing up. And then on top of that, you add an understanding of the nature of energy, and that everything is energy. As long as energy is able to be kept freely flowing, there's always a state of resolution that gets reached, and it doesn't cause a problem. But in life, when we go, oh, and when the circuit breaker flips to protect us, and the energy gets trapped, then this creates an unseen block in our system. That then when the energy comes up later, it runs up against that block. That's called a trigger. So the question becomes, how do we return to free the flow so that the emotion can move through without triggering, without provoking the old stuff? It's got to be released. And there are ways to do it. The absolutely marvelous thing about all of this is that there's something in us that's always been there and always will be there, watching, recording, cataloging all of it. It's like the all-seeing eye or the omniscient part of who we are, which I have called the non-conscious. Within our being, our non-conscious and our bodies, there's a record. And there is the wisdom to tell us where to go to find these hidden blocks and how to release them. Because once they're released, we can then be in a similar situation that used to cause us distress, even not that long ago. But it doesn't happen again because we don't have the triggered energy show up and feel like we're being taken over by it, by the reaction that comes when we're triggered. Instead, we can simply be there, and there's no trapped energy to get activated, so we maintain our equanimity. So what does make a huge difference is when we go with love, care, and acceptance to where the live and let them resolve, all things become possible in your life. And then whatever is there to be dealt with in life, because life gives us challenges, can just be dealt with, but from a powerful place, because we don't get triggered, we don't get made small, we don't find ourselves in those places of self-doubt. And at that point, it feels like you've become a completely different person, but also, oddly enough, feeling more yourself than you've ever felt before. A different person, but more at home and more yourself than you've ever felt. So welcome to the door of the promised land that I mentioned at the beginning of this session. So now think for a second about how this might be playing out in your life. Do you see repeating patterns of where you get stopped, or where fear or self-doubt seems to win out over what you want? Maybe you've seen a bit about why this is happening. My clients who have been or still are in talk therapy help me to see the limits of these modalities that rely on the thinking, rational, conscious mind and the emotions to unravel these stuck places. It's not that there isn't benefit in them, not at all, because there certainly is and can be. However, getting to the root of what's causing the problem, that's an entirely different story. The conscious mind cannot take you there. And this is why the understandings that I've laid out in sessions 1 and 2 are critical. Beginning to understand that the non-conscious plays such a huge role in our lives, and that everything is energy and all that that implies, opens up an entirely different context to solving the most frustrating and heartbreaking dilemmas in your life. So coming up in session 4, in our next and last session, I'm going to bring in more about what starts to show up on the other side of releasing these hidden blocks. What awaits in the promised land. Because when you remove that which isn't you, it's just the old stuff from the past that never really was you. Those old stuck beliefs, those trapped emotions, that act as triggers in life, then who you already are, deeply are, is already there. So next session, I'm going to bring in more of what I would call the spiritual dimension, and you're not going to want to miss it. So now, for the technique for today. So this is a technique that I use to help access the body's non-conscious. And it's if you think of this, in essence, like you're accessing a computer. But because the computer doesn't work on a conscious way, you can't dialogue with it. And I'm gonna keep this brief because we'll talk a little bit more about it next time. But it's something called muscle testing, and you may have become familiar with it. Muscle testing, applied kinesiology. Not a lot, but in certain alternative practices, certain chiropractors, certain things, they use muscle testing to help to see if something is supportive or non-supportive for the body. So this is the same idea here, is we use our hands. It's the easiest way to do it. There's other ways to do it, but I'm going to show you a couple of these. And if you want to know more, there's lots of videos on YouTube. But the idea here is you're going to use the body and you're going to present simple yes-no questions and have the body give you the response of yes or no. So I'm going to teach you the technique, and then I'll talk a little bit about how to use it, to begin using it. This is a technique I use a lot in many different ways. So I'm going to keep it simple just as a place to start. So the idea is you're going to, if a statement is supportive of or you're in congruence with the statement, your body's musculature and the electrical system of your body stays strong. If a belief is, if a statement is false or it makes you weak or is not supportive, it slightly weakens the body. It's a similar-ish idea as to how lie detectors work. It's different, but it's a similar kind of an idea. So you're going to use your fingers. The technique I use is like this. I do my fingers like this, and you're going to go like this. And I'll explain in a minute what I mean by this. You go like this. Another way to do it is people will use the thumb and middle finger and do 2 rings. I got 1 ring here and then another ring here. I put them together so that you see this, and if I pull, it releases or it holds. It holds or releases. And there's come up some other ways to do it. Some people do it like this, and it stays strong or it's weak. You can do it like this. Keep your fingers together like this, and you go strong or weak. Strong or weak. So the idea is you want to find for yourself, and this takes practice like anything, but you'll be surprised how quickly you can feel comfortable with it, is that I like to do this. This is just the way I like to do it. So before I do muscle testing I do a couple things just to make sure that I'm calibrated. So I say, give me a yes, and it stays strong. It's not breaking through. Give me a yes. Give me a no. And I'm not doing anything different with these fingers. And it's just a light touch, and you play with that a little bit to see. You don't want to push down real hard. You don't push down real hard. Sorry, I'm kind of scaring myself. You don't push down real hard. It's more just like a little like this, a little bit of pressure. So you just find for yourself, and you play with this until you kind of feel a real distinct difference between give me a yes, I'm pushing pretty hard, give me a no, and it breaks right through. And then I say, my name is Daniel. My name is Daniel. I get a yes. My name is Albert. Get a no. And I'm not doing anything different with this or this with the pressure. So the idea is your body is telling you by the response, by holding strong or weakening a little bit, and it breaks. So the idea here is that you can start asking yourself questions. So what kind of questions? Anything. There's a real trick here about asking questions, which we'll have to, if you look on YouTube, I don't have the time to go into it in this video. I'll probably make a video I'll put on YouTube for myself. So I can say, Am I happy? So this is just fun. Am I happy with how this video has turned out so far? Yes. Do I wish it wouldn't have gone so long? Yes. Do I wish I could teach this muscle testing more quickly and easily? No, I'm actually okay with that. I feel okay with it. The frustration for me is that this technique is really, really powerful. There's so much you can do with it, but you got to get used to just getting a yes or no. So you could ask yourself, for instance, think of something that you want to make a decision about, but nothing like overly important or is fraught with emotion, because then that brings in some other things. But just say, would it be a good idea for me to have broccoli for dinner tonight? Yes. Would it be a good idea for me to eat that piece of cake? No. So again, I'm doing this in a way that's kind of simple, but the idea is you want to start getting comfortable with asking questions. Ask the question, give me a yes. You wait for a half a second. You don't give me a yes. Question is not, give me a yes. Give your body it takes a half a second. For it to register, for your body to register the question, give me a yes. See, I did it too fast. Give me a yes. Give it a second, yes. Give me a no. Give me a no. Give me a no. So part of this is being really present when you ask the question and give your body a chance to really answer the question that you're asking. Play with it, have fun with it. And you might actually play with it just to help you to kind of, maybe if there's something that you're a little confused about, ask yourself lots of questions about it. They have to be sort of simple yes-no questions. As soon as you put in too much, then it's very difficult to get an accurate answer. But something you're trying, that's not anything too dramatic at this point in your life, but something that's maybe confusing, you're trying to understand, ask yourself some questions. And you're going to get the answers about you, your body, and how it relates. If you start asking about, what does he think over there? This is not the technique to use for that. Because this is registering an impact on your body of a particular statement. Okay, so go have fun with it, play with it, and look forward to the next video, because this is going to pull all of this together and kind of help to, what I'm wanting to open up for you is how profound the change can be when you do this work. I had no idea for myself until I started to do this work years ago of what a difference things could make when you start removing the blocks. And I could realize how we're so trained to think, yeah, they're kind of always going to be there, and you just have to kind of figure out a way to work around them. No! There's something else entirely that's possible. So come back. And so in the meantime, here's to your best life, and thank you very much for joining me. Bye for now.